Hey everybody, welcome to High Spirits. I'm Ben Larson, and actually with me today,
AnnaRae. Hello, everyone.
So for the first time since we first started recording this.
Yeah, in person. We had to come to Sin City to do it.
This is great. Yeah.
I'm so happy. I'm tired and delirious and just like stoked to be with you.
This episode brought to you by Morning Recovery. Have you tried Morning Recovery?
I have not.
Pretty great. I don't know how good it is for my health because you drink it while you're drinking, if you're a drinker, and you wake up in the morning without a hangover.
I don't know much about it, but I love a brand that has an obvious name. Like you don't need to explain it.
Yeah.
It's called Morning Recovery. I know what that's supposed to do.
So. I now buy them not only in advance, so like I travel to Vegas with them just to make sure I had them, but I buy more than I need so I can gift them to people and elate them with a hangover-free morning.
Have you talked to them about infusing them with cannabis yet?
That's a good idea. I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah. This podcast is not brought to you by Morning.
No. In fact, actually today, so we're having our morning mixer.
Yes.
Which it's just like I want to give ourselves a pat on the back. It is high five. It's 8:30 and change, and we're here on a Thursday in Vegas.
This is day 4 of Vegas for me. So the fact that I woke up at 6:45, I got fresh for y'all. But I feel really stoked to be having this event this morning because we've had all these amazing people that have been supporting us and making this content.
That's right.
We both have been in this industry for feels like a lifetime and have a lot of friends and colleagues. And there's just all this business transacting going on all around Vegas. And I keep running into people at 11:30 at the Chandelier Bar at the Cosmo, and I have no voice left. And so I'm just excited to be like fresh, showered, and like not having an agenda, just to like build community and hang out.
I too showered this morning, so we are winning. So today, I would love to thank Genetica for sponsoring our event and making sure that we're here, and we have a bunch of lovely beverages. I'm not going to rattle through the list right now, but a huge thank you to all the beverage sponsors for today. People are not going to leave thirsty.
Absolutely.
Or uninfused.
There might be more drinks here than humans coming, but
yeah. And Sarah Falvo, who's out in the other room, just making sure that everything looks perfect and everyone's gonna be fed. So yeah.
Fun.
Anyone in Vegas is not watching this. I'm pretty guaranteed. Well, I was gonna say swing by, but like, who am I talking to?
Well, so those that are listening or watching, maybe we should just do a quick rundown of what's going on in Vegas right now.
Yeah, what is going on in Vegas? I think things are feeling pretty positive.
Yeah, I'd say the sentiment is high. No pun intended. So I have actually been at the Remind conference, which is the psychedelic arm of the MJ BizCon for the past 2 days.
Nice.
I've been going to that during the day and then moving into my cannabis networking and meeting businessing afterwards.
So the psychedelic conference in Colorado earlier this year was massive.
The MAPS conference. Yeah, there was, I think, 20,000 plus people.
How was this in comparison?
Oh, this is like a fraction of the size. There's probably about 500 people that have been there or were there for the last couple of days, but it was a great event. I had a lovely time. I would say that there's not much business to be businessing over in the psychedelic space right now, but there's a lot of really passionate, excited people that are exploring.
Okay.
And, I'm always down to explore. So really fun conversations. I got to meet a whole bunch of people doing cool, weird stuff with form factors. I saw some sublingual mushroom somethings or others. I saw some gushers that had all of the psychoactive stuff taken out, but it was still a mushroom something or other. I don't know. There's some fun stuff happening.
I have many questions, but on a Thursday in Vegas, my brain can only handle cannabis.
Yeah, and that's really what we're here to talk about. But I do think that it's been interesting to get to have the psychedelic conference paired with the cannabis one so that we can, I think, make it easier for people that are in cannabis to learn about it. But I do think that the two industries are really very different And their trajectories will be different.
But a lot of familiar faces, right? Like one of my gripes is like how quickly we lost a lot of advocates to the mushroom movement. It's like they got tired of fighting for cannabis and like have moved on to like advocating for psilocybin.
I don't see it that way, but there were so few people there that I wouldn't say that there were tons of cannabis people there.
Okay.
Because it's still a small event. And I hope that they stick with it and that they build it over time and that the whole space continues to grow in a positive way.
Good.
Yeah. But yeah, then I went to a party on Tuesday night from the Flower Hire folks, which was really fun. Grasslands put on a massive party last night. They're a PR company in the space. I went to a kind of New York focused party sponsored by PAX last night. Also,
whoa!
I've been on on the party train. Who hasn't?
I haven't.
What are you doing here?
You want to know how many parties I went to? 0.
So why do you seem so much more hungover than me?
Well, so party. I did not go to a registered event. Well, with the exception of ATACH. I did go to the ATACH Captains of the Industry event. I go to that one every year. Great to just see people rally around like the movement, right? Like the work that we do on the Hill, all that kind of stuff. So it was excited to be there. In fact, we have a couple guests today.
I know.
And one of them was there last night hanging out with me. The other guest today was at an event that I probably should have been at, which we'll just talk about that less later.
You can't do it all.
No, you can't do it all. And I did very little, and it was purposeful because I had a 9:30 a.m. meeting yesterday morning. I had this 8:30 today.
Yes.
I have a 7:30 meeting tomorrow, which I'm supposed to be back in the Bay Area.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought you were leaving tonight.
I am. It's just like, it's all just going to happen miraculously. But interesting this year. I think what really frames it up for me is that there's just a lot of hemp activity. Like a lot of people were heading to this MC Nutraceuticals event last night. Mm-hmm. I did not go.
I didn't either.
But it's interesting to be at a cannabis conference and have like large profitable hemp companies throwing these events. And it's I think 2024 is going to be an important time for us to kind of merge this conversation between hemp and cannabis and try to get people on the same page, because it's like just two different realities going in parallel at the same time.
Except that I will say that the cannabis people, I'm starting to see the sentiment change. There isn't as much anger and snake oil talk. I think that there's more acceptance and understanding of what's happening on in the hemp space. And people are starting to realize that they either pay attention and be open to that. Maybe that's a path that their business should explore.
Yeah.
But that fighting against it kind of blindly is going to get us nowhere. Okay. And so I see that there is a natural coming together. And I see that, the networking and all the talking is integrated. Like there's not a line down the middle of the room.
Interesting.
So.
All right. Well,
should we bring some of our guests on?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to do this one at a time?
One at a time.
Okay, because we just got one extra mic.
Yeah.
All right.
So first up, we'll just go in order of arrival. So we have my fellow board member, executive board member for NCIA. We have Michael Cooper from MadisonJay Solutions. Michael, your mic is sitting there on the chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Hey, guys.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I was going to make it sound like I just heard you say, come on down at 8:30, and I just wandered over. I was watching live, guys. If you show up, you could be on air in minutes.
You can.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone shows up, we will bring them on air.
Well, so you guys clearly know each other. This is the first time we've met.
Yes.
Give me the 2 minutes.
Sure. So most notably for this, I'm the secretary of the board of NCIA. That's how Ben and I get to spend a lot of time together. Ben is doing very important work for us as the treasurer. So for everyone out there listening, another thing that Ben does for this industry is volunteer his time for the arduous task of being the treasurer for a nonprofit trade association. I also co-chair policy, which is how I first got to know Chris, who is sitting off camera, but I promise he really is here, and people get to hear from him soon enough. But I'm a lawyer by training. MadisonJay Solutions, we provide regulatory strategies for our clients. Essentially, if you're in this space,
you need a regulatory strategy.
Exactly. A business strategy is inherently dependent in this space, in our view, on what the rules let you do or they let your clients do. So we help people build out a plan to leverage opportunities that are going to be there in their launch markets, expansion markets over time, across industries. If you want to be in hemp and cannabis, how do you make a singular brand that works there? So that's what we do. That's my 2-minuter.
Awesome.
And if you're ever in New York, Michael knows where to get pizza.
That's true. Ben and I.
New York home for you?
New York is home. So we're based out of New York City. And when Ben was in town, I think I sent him like 20 different neighborhood-specific pizza suggestions for where we could go, depending on where Ben was going to be, because I feel like that's my job as the New Yorker. There's a lot of great food in the Bay Area, but I feel like pizza is a thing that people would say, okay, New York, I should get pizza. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about regulatory strategy for a minute, because actually one of my favorite topics. So thank you very much. For
Thank you.
That for me. So when I started my first cannabis business, I thought of myself as an entrepreneur and not an advocate or an activist. And I realized pretty fast that if I was going to build in cannabis, that I needed to know what the fuck was going on with policy and also understand how to affect it.
Yeah.
And that really did turn me into an advocate. Mm-hmm. And I haven't been on the NCAA board, I have been on the CCIA board in California. And now I mostly work on business strategy. And I often I use a sports metaphor when I talk about regulatory strategy. So I'm going to give it to you.
Please.
Which is that I think that there's a lot of folks who are building and they don't like compliance. That's maybe why that they're in cannabis. Rules have never applied to them, right? But I think about it as like, if you are a football player, running back, and you're trying to like get across to get a touchdown, and I don't even like sports, so I'm really bad with sports metaphors, but I still see it.
I'm trying to follow.
You want to know who all the players are that are coming at you. Yep. Like, what are they good at? Are they going to come at you from behind, from the side? And that is how you win the game. And so I think that folks that don't understand all the regulations at play, they just are also then not executing on the business opportunity that's in front of them to understand, because it's not about loopholes. It's actually about winning. So that's really cool that's what your focus is. I love it.
Look, I'm with you 100%. I think maybe I'm a bigger sports fan, but to me, it's a great example of, I always tell people, nobody comes to me and says, hey, give me a business strategy, right? Ben, with an incredible business background, he has a business concept. But that business concept, that's like being the quarterback.
Yeah.
I love your analogy because the offensive line may not be as glamorous, but you're never going to get where you want to go if you don't have a good offensive line. If you don't have even, and this was a very granular analogy because I liked it, right? You need to have somebody set the protection. You need to know, okay, this person's blitzing, this person is coming, this person's dropping back. Exactly. You need a plan that actually works, because if you block someone who's dropping into coverage, this is getting very football-y, but I'm loving this analogy though.
You can use it.
If you allocate resources to block someone who's dropping into coverage, you're going to miss somebody else. And in business sense, you're wasting money, right? So you want to know, where are the risks? Where are the real risks? How real are they? And then you can make a business decision. That's how the Fortune 500s I used to work with make decisions, right? And that's how cannabis companies should make decisions.
Especially in this industry where everything's changing.
Of course.
At rapid pace.
Yeah.
All times.
And risk, I think, is so much more about black and white. It's really about like what's on the other side of that risk and what happens. And so like you're running across the field and like, that someone might come at you when you run towards them, but it's like, are you willing to accept the consequence on the other side of that? For what the win might look like. And I think that that's an important part of it too, as entrepreneurs, to kind of assess those consequences and understand what the penalty will be.
And so much of it is unsettled. This is a new industry. We talk about, so we spun our company out of a player in the spirit space. And in spirits, there are many, many, many decades of trade practice that you can point to and say, this is something the TTB believes falls under this rule, and this is something the TTB doesn't believe falls under this rule. The thing that we all face as an industry, and why I think that this is such an interesting place to be in, is that it's all changing. This is all unsettled. A rule comes out, it may have never been applied. And so that's one of the reasons, Ben, you know this, one of the things we're doing at NCIA now is we have a monthly webinar series with different state regulators. So the next one is going to be Brian Hanna from Michigan. And you can see in Michigan, one of the things that I'm excited to get into, there's a change over time. They started out at one place on enforcement, and now they clearly are enhancing enforcement as they try to mature their market. And it's a fascinating transition from launch Michigan to today's Michigan. How do you deal with that? And then how do you make a plan around that?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to build your business and then have what looks okay no longer work in 2 years. You've lost a heck of a lot of brand equity, planning, resources. So to me, I love this.
Awesome.
Bringing it back to Vegas.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. What are you feeling like? What's top of mind for people as far as like strategy goes right now and policy? Like, you know, I always use MJ Biz as like my kind of my check-in for like where were we at as an industry. You know, we were talking about hemp earlier. I'm sure that's coming up.
That's
in your strategy discussions.
That's got to be at the top of the list. Hemp, obviously the Farm Bill functionally extended for a year. That's something that people they're focused on. What that means, and also what it'll mean in the states, because some states were hoping that Congress would give more clarity and sort of take this off of their plate to some extent.
Do you think this just ends up with like a further patchwork of legislation like across all the states over the next year?
I think that what's going to be very interesting is what happens in 12 months, and that in 12 months, Congress will have the opportunity to readdress this. And I will be interested to see. I feel like in the probably the 2 months before the Farm Bill was reauthorized, which just happened, there was an increasingly public push by a number of groups to put more limits on hemp. And so I will be interested to see if those groups say, okay, it's now 12 months away. It's not a 4-year renewal. It's not a 5-year renewal. It's 12 months away. We're just going to keep on pushing. And so I think it's going to be fascinating to see what shakes out. And, you know, there are frankly things on the hemp side. We talk about hemp like it's a monolith. There are very different products in hemp across the hemp spectrum. And I think that sometimes, particularly on the regulatory side and on the policymaking side, the worst examples, the worst actors are what regulators tend to be most aware of in some states.
Of course.
And so I think that it will be very interesting, because there are things that, frankly, I don't think that any of us work with or know the people behind some of those products that are the ones that are most concerning to regulators. They're not in this industry circuit. I certainly don't bump into them in Vegas. Maybe you guys do. Maybe you go to cooler parties.
I went to zero parties.
Zero parties.
Like the 3,000 milligram
right, exactly.
gummy that's like the size of a basketball or something. Yeah. Someone had shared that on a podcast earlier.
It was us. That was our podcast.
Well, yeah, it was our podcast, but I mean, someone shared it, I think, in the comments. But yeah, I have not met that person.
Yes.
Well, interestingly, I think that what I notice is this confidence in the people that are developing products on the hemp side, that whatever does happen next year with the Farm Bill will still create a pathway for them. And then there's the people that aren't in the space yet, that are just like very nervous that like maybe it's all going to fall apart. And so they don't want to get started because in 2024, all of a sudden hemp's going to disappear from the face of the planet. And so there's like confidence on both sides.
Right.
And I don't know.
I would bet almost anything that there are certain products that are on the market today that will not exist in 5 years as hemp products.
5 years. But what about one?
It would not shock me if a number of them come. So if there is not federal reform in 12 months, I think that they will come under increasing scrutiny at the state level. Those products, specific kinds of products that we could all think about. The example you gave is a perfect one. The really super potent, though sufficiently heavy hemp edible, that is a thing that regulators have a lot of strong concerns about. And so I think that that's what I'll be interested to see. I think that I agree with you 100%. There are lots of people who I talk to at events like this who tell me, oh, I have a product, and there's no way that it's ever going to be impermissible. And in my head, I think, well, there are many states where you couldn't sell that product, today, including, yes. And I'm guessing if I look on your website, you probably ship it right there. But, I always say there are certain people who are inherently more likely as people to hire someone like us to give regulatory advice. And there's some people who just like to, this is Vegas. They're gamblers. They like to put it on the table and see if they can make it. So I do think that there are products that will not survive, but I think that as a general category, it's hard to imagine all of this disappearing, right?
Absolutely.
Too big to fail. So to speak. Michael, I appreciate you taking the time and joining us 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Kudos to you for being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Will you be enjoying a cannabis beverage this morning?
You know what I'm drinking right now is tea. It's regular tea. It's caffeine. That is my drug for the morning.
We have some products over on the table here that you can just pour into the tea.
Before I make way for Chris, let me just say I feel badly for everyone here because one, you can't see the beautiful view. I promise this is not a soundstage. It's beautiful behind them. And you can also not see the incredible plethora of products that are sitting just out of the shot on this table. It is amazing when you think about this industry, just the amount of beverages that are so cool and differentiated that you all have a hand in and that exist in this space.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. I mean, and the beverage space has grown so much, and it just overall, I mean, I think of myself as someone that knows all the people and knows all the products and knows all the brands. And then I come to Vegas and I realize, holy shit, there is so much more out there that is just like, there's so much. And that is one of the things that's most fun about coming to Vegas is just getting to share the energy with the people that are building in the similar space and running up against the same challenges that we all are. So thanks for
it's fantastic.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure. Yes, I'm getting out of here, guys.
Give me a handshake.
Ben?
Yeah, good to see you.
This.
Appreciate it. And
next up,
we have Chris Lindsey.
Hello.
Who is
hello.
Hello.
Greetings and salutations.
You look fantastic.
Well, thank you. I often, when I walk through casinos and I'm dressing up for a meeting, I often get confused for somebody that works here. And so I found myself actually giving directions to the elevator.
It's the blue tie.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So Chris, you've been a long time policy advisor in the space. You've done it for MPP. Obviously, like head of policy for ATACH now. Sorry if I'm butchering the official title.
Not obvious for the listeners. So
and even before all that with the U.S.
Cannabis Council.
Yeah. Sorry, I get all my councils and associations jumbled up sometimes, which is actually I think an important topic as we continue this thread of like cannabis and hemp and the intersection.
Mm-hmm.
We were hanging out last night at the ATACH Captains of the Industry event, and Michael Bronstein, the president, gave this very passionate talk about. It just takes one bad operator to really kind of label the industry and create regulations. And I don't know if we've seen a big backlash yet. Like it is just kind of this like impending threat, I guess, is like, I think a lot of people, especially on the cannabis side, is like, the hemp opportunists, like, just flooding in the industry. But I mean, luckily, I don't think we've had any like major headlines come out about hemp, like the intersection of hemp
last
and cannabis.
Really big thing I'd say that it wasn't hemp related was Vapegate in 2019.
Yeah.
And so what's the next one? I hope there isn't.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, that was kind of the entry point. So first of all, I actually go back. I've been in this space since 2008. So a lot of that was in Montana. A lot of pregame that sort of led up to my work at MPP, which was for 10 years. And then that sort of eased into the trade association world. And that was largely because of how money was starting to shift. I mean, way back in the day, it was philanthropists. And a lot of those philanthropists are now over in psychedelics. Mm-hmm. And it's the business community really that has been active in moving the ball in terms of marijuana reform. And so I sort of adapted in that sense. And MPP helped launch the U.S. Cannabis Council. And that put me in touch with a lot of folks in this and shared my passion.
Yeah.
Well, it was in that context at the U.S. Cannabis Council that we started to have members say, hey, you know, we're seeing these products show up down the street at gas stations. And in Chicago, there were companies that were just simply setting up businesses that looked exactly like the licensed businesses, but they were hemp. And they started saying, you know, what's going on with all of this? This is like in 2020, so pretty early. And that was the entry point. And it was really kind of just a curiosity. It was like, oh, wow, who are these guys? Like, how do they operate? And the regulators were pulling their hair out because the licensed marijuana businesses are heavily regulated. Like they have inspections every week in Illinois. There's like a state inspection that happens. Whoa. And so they have a really high bar. They have to pay a lot of money to do all these licenses. And the hemp folks with a basically identical looking store and products that are along the same lines. It's smokables, it's edibles, it's the full schmear. They don't have to do any of that. And the regulators couldn't walk in there and tell them anything. Mm-hmm. And so it immediately set up this sort of tension. And the concern was really just, well, what's going on? Is this fair? Because, you know, to get these business licenses is extraordinarily expensive in a state like Illinois. And then to have somebody next door, literally, that pays nothing but rent was sort of like, well, what's going on? Well, that was the start. And then the next wave was when we started realizing how many people were going to the hospital after taking these products, because the process to convert non-intoxicating CBD into intoxicants is itself a pretty hardcore process. And you can end up with a final product that contains a lot of junk. Yeah. And that's what was actually getting people sick. And so we're starting to see this, and there hasn't been like an E-Valley Vapegate blow up. But if you Google Poison Control Center, hemp-derived intoxicants, there's no shortage of incidents in which this is happening. And here's my concern. If you want to risk your health on something that you buy from a gas station, I was around for ephedrine. I remember trucker speed.
The trucker, yeah.
That's what we've got right now with these products. And if you understand that that's what that is and you're willing to take the risk, I'm not going to stop you. But if
like the stacker pills, right? Like
they were like little at the
they were little white.
Yeah, I remember those.
Right. It took a while. The FDA finally shut all that down. But
in college, we used to buy them, and I thought they were caffeine pills, but nobody really knew what they were.
Really got you going.
Oh, it got you going. It did. But we're in that kind of situation now, and the problem is that those products don't enjoy the same safety profile that marijuana has. I mean, you can consume a whole bunch of marijuana and you'll pass out. But we would have people that are consuming these other products and they're going to the ER. And that's not ever really been part of the scene. And so it's when these products started to just flat out show up dangerous that we got concerned, because the public does not understand the difference. Right. They do not get that.
Consumers don't have the responsibility to. I think it's not on them. Like, this is why we live in a society. Like, this is what our government is about. This is why we have health departments. Like, we're trying to create systems where consumers can feel that when they purchase a product through channels that are overseen by the government, theoretically, that they're safe. Theoretically. Well, so talk about then how this is translated to your work now, and in particular, I would love to hear your perspective about how you align policy goals across broad spectrums of people that you represent.
Yeah.
When you're working in trade associations.
Yeah.
Everyone's
it's a great
bringing
question.
like different ideas, like business things to the table, and I think it can be really challenging to figure out what do you advocate for.
No, that's a great question. So, and I'm thinking about that one. Your first question is, how does all this hemp stuff, how is that manifesting now? So in the wake of all of these products emerging, I started writing and researching about it, and that culminated in a paper that was published by Michael Bronstein at ATACH. And so I worked with him and his team, and it was an attempt to say, here's what's going on with this. And it was not saying it's evil. It's not saying this is the best thing that's ever happened. It's just to say, well, what is this? And then in light of the fact that it's now here, what are we going to do? And so what is a regulatory framework that is workable? Because it's not a should we or shouldn't we, it's what do we do now? And so that was the sort of the way it got set up. And then once we got that published, it really naturally informed what our lobbying work needed to be, because we had very specific recommendations for what the federal government ought to do and what states ought to do. So we headed down that path. And right now, the Farm Bill is under consideration. The Farm Bill is where a lot of this hemp stuff, it's where all the hemp stuff really came from. And so it's a one every 5 years kind of bill. It was natural that we should get into that conversation while it's happening. And so we started lobbying pretty heavily, both committees that are called committees of jurisdiction, which means that they have hands directly on this issue in that Farm Bill. So we've been talking to them extensively over the past many months about what the reality is, cutting through a lot of the unfortunately, there's a lot of BS that gets thrown around about these products. And so educating lawmakers and helping them understand where can we address this in meaningful ways. And so that's been the focus.
So what is when you look in the crystal ball,
yes.
What do you see?
Well, the reality is no matter what the federal government does, states are going to have to deal with the problem, because the federal government can say this is all completely 100% illegal and we hate every inch of it. And it's no different than marijuana. Well, states have gone their own way. 3 out of 4 now have regulatory programs. So that aspect of it is not going to change. So federal government, there's definitely things that can happen, but states is where the heavy lift will be. And here's the concern that I have right now is, while a lot of hemp lobbyists right now in DC are saying, oh, this is a states' rights issue, let states handle this because they do it so well with marijuana. At the state level, they are going to federal court and blocking states from imposing regulations saying you're preempted by federal law. Yes. Uh-huh. And so they're literally trying to create a completely unregulated lane for themselves. And I can't support that, because there are people going to the ER on these products, and we will all be judged on the worst of us. Mm-hmm. If we are complicit or seen as complicit in products that are sold to kids or which put people in the hospital, we're all going to go off the rails, because the public does not say, oh, that's one of those new hemp guys that was doing it in their basement. That's not legalization. Mm-hmm. People don't make that distinction. And so we have to be adults about the fact that when people put products in their body, if they get sick, we're going to get accountable for that. And that's where we're coming from.
So, Chris, you've been doing this for some time now. I think you said you were at MPP for 10 years. MJ Biz 2024. We're sitting here. What do you think has happened over the last year, right? Like, what's are we going to see progress as far as kind of getting our hands around this, or?
Yes. Well, states will end up with the solution. They have to. Yeah. I think the courts need to have better advocacy in order to avoid some of the constitutional pitfalls that have been there. There have been some early gains that were made in cases in which the hemp guys were going in and trying to keep states from trying to treat this like marijuana. But I think the courts are starting to come around on some of those early arguments and seeing that this isn't quite so black and white. Clearly, Congress did not aim to legalize marijuana. If they did, Biden wouldn't have asked about rescheduling. We wouldn't have bills before Congress that they're dutifully ignoring that would legalize marijuana. So that was never the plan. And so we're going to see a recalibration on that. FDA is very concerned about this. State and federal attorneys general are very concerned. The regulators, that's not who I would fear if I were in that industry right now. I would fear the tort bar, the guys who are going to go after businesses for selling harmful products. And I would fear the U.S. attorneys general who are looking for every reason to go in there and start shutting these businesses down.
So you clearly have a position and an opinion in the way that you're approaching this work. And it sounds like my guess is that you have some really great key talking points that you're using when you're talking with people in the government. And so going back to that question, I know you're not just speaking for yourself. You're speaking for larger groups of people that are trusting you to carry a message forward. And so how do you make sure that you're representing multiple parties at once? Like how does this position come to be?
Yeah, well, in the way that you set it up was, when you're at the trade association, how do you represent a whole bunch of different individuals? And that's a great question. So, and I've seen a couple different entities sort of form, and I have to say that I have learned some lessons. And I think that the key is let me start with where everybody likes to start, which is, hey, there are a lot of groups running around in DC right now, and everybody's kind of got their opinion, and it's confusing when you have different groups go in and talk to the same lawmaker. So you know what we need? We need to have one organization that's going to be the umbrella. Let's bring everybody together. We all line up. We all want to see the end of the war on drugs and yada, yada, yada. Right. And that sounds great.
Yeah.
So
we all agree on that.
We all agree on that. So we get everybody in the room together. Hey, everybody, let's talk about our backgrounds and what we think should happen. The problem with that is that you don't start with a vision. You start with, well, I think we all ought to get together. And that's easy. The hard part is to say, this is what we need to do, and I want you all to come with me on that. And that is what has actually not happened in our industry very often. We tend to have sort of we ought to be a big tent. And so whoever has that idea, well, guess what? They want to put that big tent up and have everybody join their plan. And a lot of these organizations are like, well, we kind of have our lane and we're good with that. And so they don't want to just sign on in the name of let's all have a kumbaya moment.
Sure.
It's a completely different thing when you have somebody that says, here's something that needs to be addressed. And if you agree with me, come along.
Get on board.
And that's where Michael Bronstein and ATACH has been, where he identified the hemp-derived intoxicants issue and said, we need to address that. As a trade association working with state-licensed businesses, this is something that has to be responded to. And he did the same thing with rescheduling. He said, if we can possibly get it to 3, does it mean legalization? It doesn't. But 100% of the businesses that are cannabis businesses in America would eliminate the worst tax on the planet. That is a win.
It's a big win.
And so he went in those directions. That's vision. And that's so the folks that support the work that Michael and I are doing, they understand what we're there to do, and they share that passion. And so it doesn't come from a vote and then I go and run and do the thing. It's really out of Michael's laptop and his vision and the work that he's been doing all this time.
So like from the earlier days in the industry, like going back to the early teens, right? It was this idea that we'd go state by state, legalize, and even at one point I was like, let's go medical first and then we'll transition to recreational. And then, things started one going before the other. Has the strategy changed? Because the government does silly things sometimes, and it's like, that wasn't supposed to happen, that was not in my playbook. Has the strategy changed because of of what has happened with hemp over the last couple of years? Or
it hasn't yet, but it will. Yeah. I mean, we're definitely at an inflection point, and we're in the middle of it, so we don't know where we're going to be on the other side of this.
Like I'm often saying, it's like we shouldn't suffer the sunk cost fallacy, right? Like we need to like see the pieces that we have and what is the best way to get broad legalization done. Like
yeah.
You know,
and there is this interesting parallel. So I actually did a video on this. So on the one hand, we've got the state story, the legalization, the classic legalization story. California, the West Coast, everybody else, they voted either through voter initiatives or states adopted it through legislative process. There's a chosen few that go get licenses, they operate, they get hammered in the market and all the rest. We all know that story, right? In the meantime, here comes Congress, 2014, then in 2018, and they tweaked the definition of hemp. And it sort of opens up this lane for non-intoxicants to be converted into intoxicants, and for there to at least be a legal argument that is okay, right? And so now the products that come from that are, at least right now, considered to be completely outside of the Controlled Substances Act and outside of the state regulatory system. So now we have a parallel set of drugs, basically, same intoxicants and exotic new ones that do not participate at all in the state regulatory systems. And they have effectively fallen off of the regulatory framework for the federal government. They technically belong to the FDA because anything that you put in your body on purpose in the United States is regulated by the FDA. And so marijuana and hemp-derived intoxicants are FDA regulated. They just don't have any capability to go do any enforcement. They've always relied on the DEA to handle all the people doing the marijuana stuff. Mm. Well, now we have hemp, and the DEA is like, you broke it, you bought it. It's not in the Controlled Substances Act anymore. It's not our jurisdiction. At least that's one version. They haven't come out officially with anything. And so we have these two different products that are really operating at the same time under completely different sets of rules. Yeah. So if you're a hemp guy, you want to know what states don't have limits on your products. And I'm just going to start selling to those, and I can get UPS to send it. Yeah. If you're a marijuana guy, you're operating under a state license system, and you operate in your dispensary or you sell to a dispensary. So we're doing both of these at the same time. Now, on the state side, we've really kind of taken the ball as far as we can. States can't do more than what they've done already, right? They're as good as they can be to banks. They're as kind as they can be on taxes. They've, their systems are dialed in. The federal government has proved by now that it doesn't have to do a thing about any of this. Like, change your laws, we're not budging. We won't even change banking laws for you. That's how dug in the federal government is. And yet, at the same time, hemp is running down the field as fast as possible because the federal government just has no capacity to handle this product right now. Now, in 5 years, there will definitely be hemp-derived intoxicants. No question about it. The question is, what regulatory systems are going to be around them? Are they going to be dirty trucker speed that everybody's like, ooh, you take those products? Or are they going to be integrated into every single business's product line? Because maybe it just makes sense, right?
Yeah, and what occurs to me with these kind of broad policy visions is it goes back to what you were talking about the potential safety issues that come up when converting CBD into other compounds. And that really, if the intention is to allow low dose THC to be available widely, and right now it's through hemp, like, wouldn't it be easier if we could all just take the plant that has the higher concentration more naturally and bring it out to the masses in a way that we're not needing to do a complicated conversion that creates, chemical side effects that nobody wants.
I will pause and there are ways to do a clean chemical conversion because
absolutely
FDA regulated industries, this happens all the time. Insulin is like a synthesized product, right? And it's not made from pig intestine anymore, or whatever was the original source.
Right. The issue is not the hemp derived; it's the unregulated hemp derived. Yeah. It's basically saying that the bathtub gin should just be allowed while we go figure out how to handle formal, end of alcohol prohibition. And there are inherent risks. When we know people get sick with those products, we may need a different plan than just saying, let's rip the Band-Aid off and then let's just see what happens, because the public doesn't get that those products operate in a different world.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to time because this is our pre-party live podcast.
I smell carbs.
I know. There's everything bagels are in the room.
Must go into my stomach soon.
Tell us about Vegas and just like your highlight of Vegas so far, if you would.
Well, I'm with Ben. I checked out pretty early last night. The highlight for me is being here today with these sophisticated companies at Vegas, of all places. I remember the very first MJBizCon was in Denver in a church. And I remember everybody was so impressed with how many suits are in the audience. So
now we're just disappointed with how many suits are in the audience.
Now it's about sneakers.
Yeah, exactly.
So the contrast, the then and now, is pretty remarkable. We've come an amazing distance.
Wow. I did not get to attend that one. My first was at the Rio, which is right over there.
I think it was the next year that it was in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Maybe 2010 or something. I spoke at that one, maybe 2011.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I was on federal probation. I had to get permission to leave the state, but they let me leave the state because I was at MJBizCon to say, this ain't over yet. You can still get in big, big trouble with the federal government. So that's the only reason I got to go to that event.
More on that later. Very cool. Well, Chris, I can't thank you enough.
Sure.
Really
Thanks for having me here.
Really appreciate it. Everything that you do for the industry. Keep fighting the good fight.
Absolutely. And you too. You're tremendous support for the work that gets done.
Appreciate it.
And I really appreciate what you said earlier about just putting a flag in the ground with actually trying to lead with a position. I think that's a unique perspective. So
I think it's what we need.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for doing the hard work. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. And I think we're just gonna wrap up now.
I guess so. Should we bring anyone in from the other room? Or
I don't know. I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah. We have some infused beverages to go consume and get our day started.
Yeah. Well, Las Vegas, BizCon, this has been fun.
Success.
Yeah. And for anyone that's watching or listening from afar, we hope we've given you a bit of a taste.
Yeah.
And you can come join us next year. We'll do this again.
Episode 20. We nailed it.
Yes.
Live from Las Vegas. I'm very proud of ourselves. We'll be back to our regular programming next week, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, huge thanks again to Sarah Falvo for putting together the event today, for our sponsors, the beverage sponsors. I'll drop them into the comments. Genetica for being our prime sponsor and making sure that everyone leaves this event fed. We have people flowing in now. So if you're not here in Vegas, come next year, hit us up. This has been episode 20.
Episode 20.
All right.
Awesome.
We're on a roll.
Yes.
All right, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good time.
Bye.
See you soon.